So happy to have you here. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Dr. Roberts. So while she shares her screen. So Dorian is an inspiring administrator, a mother, daughter, best friend, and most importantly, herself. She has an education specialist degree in educational leadership from Saginaw Valley State University. Dorian possesses her administrative certification along with a current teaching certificate. She's currently a fifth grade teacher in Detroit Public Schools with over 10 years of teaching experience, plus 3 years in administration. During Dorian's time as assistant principal, she has led curriculum initiatives that have raised student achievement, led the team in establishing positive behavior supports and responsive intervention, as well as operating the disciplinary leader for the student body. Along with these experiences in administrative leadership, Dorian possesses many qualities that make her a successful leader. She has a passion for providing students with a positive learning environment that nurtures their creativity and achievement. Dorian also has the ability to nurture relationships with all stakeholders, including boards of directors, administrative teams, teachers, parents, and most importantly, students. All in all, she's dedicated to providing a high-quality learning environment for all students that nurtures innovation from the staff, creativity and mastery of skills for the students, positive communications with parents and families, and high expectations for all. So what's left to do in 2016? Well, according to her, she says, I have 2 items on my professional bucket list that I would like to explore. Number 1, becoming a presenter at ed camps and conferences like here. Number 2, using more technology in the classroom. So you can connect with Dorian at Dr. Roberts on Twitter, LinkedIn, or on Boxer at Dr. Roberts. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to my good friend, Dorian.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And my presentation, I'm not sure how others have gone, but I've been authorized to self and be as authentic me as I possibly can. It is Saturday, September 3rd, and I'm just going to be me and tell you my story. I titled this presentation, Started from the Bottle, and Now I Am Here, because of the fact that 2 years ago, I didn't use any type of technology with my school or with myself per se, except for to tweet out my favorite TV shows and the characters on my shows, which I still do, by the way. So we're going to go ahead and get started. When I was asked to do this presentation, it had a slide requirement minimum. I am not a professional keynote speaker. So for me to do, I can tell telling the story and picking out slides, that's another thing. So a good friend of mine, Alan Iverson, I kind of mimicked what he said about practice. I was like, slides, are we talking about slides? Or are we talking about the story, the message, the lesson? Choosing to talk about the story, the message, and the lesson. Now, I am a teacher at Detroit Public Schools, which is now called Detroit Public Schools Community. There is, when you hear about Detroit, hear about Chicago Public Schools, there's a certain stigma. And the stigma used to lead to my left. You may think that when you hear Detroit, I grew up in a place like to my left. No, I didn't. I really grew up to the place to my right. Detroit is a beautiful city. It's on the cutting edge. It's down, but it's never out. It is truly the underdog of all American cities, urban American cities. When I decided to, my first career was in sports journalism, and I decided to go into education because I realized at that time the story writing for the audience that I was writing for, men, young men, minority men, reading my articles because they could not read my articles. So at that time, I decided to pick up teaching, and I decided to see what I could explore with educating our urban youth and getting them to understand there were other positions in life besides being an athlete. You could be an agent, you could be a writer, you can be a manager, you can be a sports manager, you can be a medicine therapist, and all of those natures. So 16 years I decided to join 15 years, I decided to join Detroit Public Schools. My first two schools, they were really adequately equipped with technology. I was doing good. So the pace of this story, I'm going to bring you back to really a year ago last year, this time, when I got transferred to another building called Bagley Elementary. Bagley Elementary itself is 100 years old. It's been a part of the school district forever and a day. It is a neighborhood school, a good school, but it is not tech friendly. When I'm just going to go back just to teens. I was prepared to try different things, and I thought I was going to my reoccurring school in the fall. I got Bagley, but during the summer, I decided I heard about this Simple K-12 PD in your pajamas. So I said, what do I have to lose? I'm home for the summer. I'm on my deck. I'm barbecuing. It's free. Let me tune in and see what this is about. So I believe the presentation that I looked at was called How to Work with Google Hangouts. So the presenter was Sarah Thomas. And I looked at her presentation. I liked it. She offered up her Twitter. We had a little bit of a computer glitch, I remember, and she was like, if you have any more questions about the presentation, you can reach me on Twitter. Here's my email. So I had a couple of questions about Google Hangouts, because when I tried it outside of the simple K-12 directions that she provided during her presentation, it wasn't working. So I reached out to Sarah on Twitter. This was like the first time ever that I tried to reach out to somebody on Twitter that I knew was a live person. So I reached out to her on Twitter. She responded rather quickly. And we set up a time the next weekend for me to, for her to kind of give me some one-on-one with Google Hangout. Well, in meeting Sarah, I found out that she was a graduate at Howard University. I was a graduate of Norfolk State University, both of those historically Black colleges and universities. So we kind of had a little banter, a little bond, if you will. And that was really nice. And we started talking about ourselves as individuals. And she introduced me. She said, have you ever heard of EduMatch? Have you ever heard of Voxer? So she introduced me to Voxer. And I'm like, oh my goodness, she introduced me to Voxer. And I thought that was really cool. I got on Voxer for the first time, and I met a lot of friends. With that being said, I joined EduMatch on Voxer and had tons of exposure and people that were from all over the country in my likeness, so to speak, in technology. So I'm like, man, this is really cool. So like I said, I already had this tool chest of things that I was going to try. And then I want to say it was a week before school, I found out that I was getting transferred to Bagley Elementary. I get in the classroom. There's no Promethean board. There are Little House on the Prairie chalkboards. That's all that was there. And I said, okay, game changer. My least favorite word is change. I don't like change. Because if something changes around me, I have to change within me. But sometimes in the smallest decisions that can change your life forever. And it did. I said, let me give this EduMatch, Sarah and a couple of other people on EduMatch were always talking about, oh, it's like having an emergency hotline. No matter what your situation is, you can always ask somebody on EduMatch. So I said, wait till these people get a load of what I just walked into. So I went on EduMatch and I said, hi, it's Dorian from Detroit and got a question, quick one. What do you do when you only have 2 electrical outlets in your classroom, no computers, no electronic whiteboard? What do you do? And how do you continue to integrate technology into the classroom? And from there, I like to call my classroom for 2015-2016 school year, I like to call it the EduMatch Laboratory. Because from there, we tried any and anything that worked. So I went hunting along, and I did hear about some Promethean boards that were about the building. Well, the first one I saw was on wheels, and the 4th grade teacher had it. So I played nice with the 4th grade teacher, Miss Ellison, who is one of my good coworkers now. I played nice with her. I asked her how she utilized it, and she said, well, I really don't hit with a Promethean board until second quarter. And I said, well, what do you do with it at the beginning of the school year? She said, oh, 6th. Well, the principal told me they were ordering new Promethean boards. And if you work for a district like my district, you never know when those orders are going to come in. I asked her, could I use the Promethean board? She said, yes, you can, as long as you promise me that you're going to use it. Boy, did I use it. I took that bad boy and it was on wheels, and I wheeled it all the way down to my room, plugged it up, and it was great. From there, I just started doing whatever I could to integrate technology into the classroom. Little bit later on, I'm just going to fast forward a tad bit. A little bit later on, I did the usual, but I was always challenged by my peers on EduMatch on how I could extend my learning. And I'm going to tell you something. Justin Snyder, who is on EduMatch, and he's one of the PE gurus I like to consider. I remember when I got the whiteboard in the classroom, and I was just I really felt accomplished. He said, well, Dorian, what else does a whiteboard do? I mean, you sit in front of the class, it's not really interactive. What does it do? What does it do besides presentation purposes? And I was just like, that daggone Justin, daggone it. And I kind of felt he was right. But if you are on EduMatch and you know Justin and I's relationship, I never, ever like for Justin to be right. So I said, all right, here's my challenge. I have to make this board interactive. And I have to make it the total opposite of what Justin said it does. So that's what I started to do. I started to have more student-led lessons, and I took a back seat. The kids started manipulating the board better. I would have to say around November, this grant came from nowhere. I came into work early, and I get these tablets. School secretary, Miss Jackson, she said, we got a grant, and we got 30 tablets. I said, 30 tablets? She said, yeah. She said, you know what to do with them? Because, nobody does technology in the building but you. I didn't know what to do with them, but I said, I'll take them. So the 30 tablets were in my room. And then I believe it was through EduMatch, and I want to give someone credit. but I can't think of who, that introduced me to Nearpod. You talk about my saving grace. We started doing Nearpod. The kids loved it. We started interacting with it on the tablets. I used Edmodo a great deal. The kids loved Edmodo, interacting, being able to turn in their assignments. So my next thing was just making sure that as we started from the bottom, we were spiraling up. But what I liked about starting from the bottom, and what I liked about being the only person really, really steadfast in using and integrating technology in my classroom, what I really, really appreciated about it is sky was the limit. I never saw the top of the staircase, and that's what I really enjoyed. And as I started giving assignments and giving extended, as one of my colleagues, Christy Kate, says, extended learning opportunities, because I'm learning now in social media. Homework is a bad word, but extended outside learning activities. My students would say, well, how do you want us to turn this in? You turn it in audibly. You can turn it in video. You can turn it in on Facebook. You can turn it in on Snapchat. I would give them various options. And because there was sky's the limit, I got wonderful, wonderful, wonderful responses from my students. We were determined in my class. We were very, very determined to do something different. We were very determined to create different activities that were going to stretch us. And since I was stretching myself, they were stretching themselves. And let me give you a quick example. My students were very persistent. No matter how you feel, and this is a good quote that I use, and I would tell them at the beginning of the day, no matter how you feel, get up, dressed up, show up, and never give up. Now, with that being said, my students, and I'm going to take this one assignment in ELA. We did mythology. We had a unit on mythology in 5th grade. And I told them all about, direct instruction, indirect instruction. I told them all about the Greek gods, goddesses, what they stood for, this, that, and the other. And the challenge was they were to create some type of play or some type of story to tell about their Greek mythology god or goddess. I said, you can do everything, but don't turn it in paper and pencil. I got audio reports, a blog, a podcast, so to speak. Students that I never saw before working together. They don't have technology at home. They use their phone. When they saw me bring my map book back and forth to work, they asked me, they knew how to use GarageBand, the application. I did not know how to use it. They used GarageBand, they made different sound effects, and they turned their story in. I had one assignment in social studies, and I think this is the most hilarious out of all of them. We were studying different islands, and they know I like to cruise. So we were studying different islands, so to speak. And one of the kids there's a park in Detroit called Belle Isle. And Belle Isle is an island, okay? A little small island. And what was so wonderful was they went out. They made it look like the Bahamas. They had a fake palm tree in the back. And they talked about the history of the Bahamas. And they talked about the history, the trade market there. And they did an excellent job. And I really thought for a minute, I said, now, how did they do this did they actually go to the Bahamas? And it wasn't until I saw the skyline of Detroit in the background, because their green screen flew, that I realized it was in the city of Detroit, and it was at Belle Isle Park, it just blew me away. When I showed them that the sky was the limit, they began to think that the sky was the limit. And they began to take ownership of the projects that they created. When I took away just the borders of paper and pencil, it worked very, very, very well. When I teamed them up, kids that disagreed with one another often had problems with one another. That seeing them work together and helping each other out. Seeing someone who was an audible learner listen to a podcast to help them study because they learned audibly. And it wasn't a podcast that I created. It was a podcast that one of their students created for a project. It made me and them feel really good. So if you know me, you know I like to sing. Now, those that are really, really close to me on EduMatch, they know I can come up with a song in a minute. So, in my opinion, I sound like Adele and Whitney Houston. But in some of my EduMatch colleagues' thoughts, I probably sound like this guy down here at the bottom that got booed. And I bring up singing for a reason, because singing to me coincides with teaching, because you have a rhythm. You have a rhythm, you have a flow, you have a beat. And it's really, really wonderful. We were taught in schools when students carry on the same beat as you. But what's even better is when students are able to collaborate and make their own beat, make their own rhythm. Collaborate and make their own sound. It's really, really wonderful. So as I sit back, and I often think of me in the stellar voice of Adele and Whitney Houston and Prince and Michael Jackson, even though in my head I sound like them, my students help me to sound like them. And after you begin to get a certain expertise and you help and push your students to be future leaders, you become the Quincy Jones, so to speak, and they become, the great artist and finding their way. And I really use that analogy a lot, because it's important for them not to just beat at the same drum as us. It's important for them to create their own beat. And they do that, and they can do that through when you integrate technology in your classroom. That is pretty much my story. I will add this on. With everything that's been going on at Detroit Public Schools on a national level, you guys, I'm sure some of you have heard, who are listening or who are part of EduMatch. I participated in the teacher sick-outs and things of that nature. But I have to tell you my all-time favorite high, and I had two highs during the teacher sick-out and when we made national news. When I did Twitter Live and I showed us protesting and marching through the streets of Detroit, I hooked up with somebody from NBC Live, and they followed me on Twitter. And if the teacher sick out had lasted one more day, they wanted me to interview, be on national news and interview and tell the story of the teachers. That was one high. But I'm going to tell you the highest high of all. The highest high of all is I was sitting at home during those teacher sick outs, and I was looking at one of our local news shows, and people were tweeting out what they thought about the teacher sick out, what they thought about the district running out of monies and not being able to pay their teachers. My biggest high of all is when I saw my students tweet, go across the screen and say, the district will never be able to repay the educator I have in my classroom for all that she has taught me. And I've looked for the tweet. I cannot find the tweet. But when I saw it, and I knew that that was one of my homeroom fifth graders, a boy whose reading level when he came to me was second grade reading level and ended up being seventh grade reading level. You know, all I can say to that, to God be the glory. You know what I mean? So that is the end of my presentation. I hope you are inspired at the beginning of the year. Tuesday is my first day of school, and many for the people in the state of Michigan, which is where I reside. Please reach out, follow me. Talk to me on Twitter. I do respond to all, and also talk to me on Voxer. It's the same as my Twitter handle. I hope you got as much out of it as I got as giving it to you. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your viewership.
Thank you so much, Dorian. That was amazing. So we loved hearing your story, and the chat wing was on fire. So people were saying that they could really relate and that your story touched and inspired them. So we really, really want to thank you for being here and for sharing with us. So thank you again. That was amazing. So we're going to go ahead and sign off and get ready for the 4 p.m. session. But thank you, everyone, for having joined us. And definitely we'll see you over there. All right.